I thought I would share my testimony and kind of just my story with my faith. I don't know why I haven't shared it on here. I kind of get asked for it a lot, but I've just never done it. And so I thought, why not? Why not do it now? One of the reasons I wanted to is because I truly believe sharing your story is a huge way that people can come to the faith and see what Christianity and what someone who loves Jesus looks like and what their story can look like. So I grew up in a non-religious household. So my family is actually not religious. My mom and dad were super loving. I had a great childhood. I have 2 older brothers, but we never grew up around the church. It wasn't until 6th grade that one of my friends invited me to a thing called Wildlife, which you guys know the youth group I work with is called Young Life. Young Life is like a nationwide, it's actually a worldwide Christian organization that's not necessarily connected to a church. It's just kind of its own thing. And Wildlife is the middle school version of it. And so I was invited to Wildlife and I just went because it was fun. I truly believe that if it was a regular church youth group, I probably wouldn't have gone because my family wasn't religious. We never went to church. I think church kind of scared me. I didn't really know a lot about it, but I felt like at Wildlife, it wasn't that. It was a really lighthearted. And then at the end, the last like 10 minutes, we'd get to hear a little bit about Jesus. I started going to Wildlife when I was in 6th grade. And I wasn't really interested in the God aspect of it, to be honest. I was just there for the games and the fun, but something kept pulling me to go. I just kept going. I went to all the camps, to all of the events, just kept going. And I feel really lucky that my parents, even though they chose for themselves to not necessarily be religious, my family really let me explore my faith, which I still feel so grateful for to this day. Once I got into high school, I started going to Young Life. And it wasn't until probably my sophomore year that I really started to decide like, hey, I actually think that this like faith Jesus thing might actually be for me. I'm a very, very analytical and logical person. I think that's the math teacher in me. And so it was really hard for me to just decide that I believe. I need proof. I need evidence. I need tangible things. I remember one of my leaders like challenging me and kind of asking me, do you feel like you believe in God? And I was like, yeah, I feel it. I feel his presence. I feel different when I'm at camp. I feel this joy. I feel peace. And she said, why aren't your feelings valid? Like, why aren't your feelings evidence enough? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, they're real to me. So why is this not real? And so I just decided from there, like, hey, I believe this whole thing. I started serving like wholeheartedly in Young Life. I did everything that Young Life had to offer. I served and volunteered at a camp for 3 weeks. I went to camps. I went on mission trips with Young Life, got plugged into a local church. Young Life really, really pushes like going to a local church, not just like staying in there. And so I got plugged in at a local church and I really started growing my faith for myself. But again, the very like logical person in me still wanted to research and to know. And so I never stopped learning. I always kept reading. I would listen to podcasts. I would read research articles. I wrote papers in college about Christianity because it was just something that I was passionate about and I wanted to have a way to defend my faith. Back in high school, when I was deciding where I wanted to go to college, I knew I wanted to go to a private Christian school because I just wanted something that would support my faith. I ended up going to Point Loma Nazarene, which is a private school in San Diego. I did pretty well in school, and so I was able to get some pretty good scholarships. If I didn't, I think, get those scholarships, I wouldn't have been able to go. And there at Point Loma, I feel like my faith really came into action where everyone around me was strong in their faith and I just really, really lived it out wholeheartedly. I was actually a college athlete. I was on the track team there, and about halfway through my freshman year, I started getting sick every single day. And I wasn't really sure why, but it was coming in the form of like physically getting sick, like I was throwing up, and my stomach was sick every day and I didn't know what it was. I thought I was allergic to things, and after like months and months and months of literally throwing up daily and not really knowing what was going on, and the doctor said that they think it might be anxiety. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I've never been an anxious person, but I did know that track was taking a really large toll on me. But I'm not a quitter and I've never been a quitter, and so I kept going to track while also my symptoms were just getting worse and worse and worse. And I ended up being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And so from that moment, once I kind of got the diagnosis, I was like, whoa, I think I need to take something into my own hands. So I ended up having to quit the track team, which was a huge deal for me because sports were always a huge part of my life. But for like my physical and obviously mental health, I had to quit. And that was like a huge shaking point for me. I didn't know who I was outside of being an athlete and being like fun and bubbly and high energy. And I felt like these things were being stripped from me and I didn't know my identity anymore. I still knew that I loved Point Loma and that I loved life and that I loved Jesus, but I just felt off, if that makes sense. I went back to Point Loma my sophomore year, but things just kept getting worse. My anxiety was still like at an all-time high. So I decided, along with like my therapist and my mom, to leave Point Loma, which was really sad for me because I still to this day love the school. I had great friends there. I loved it, but I ended up having to move home from college. So I moved home halfway through my sophomore year, and I lived in my childhood home with my parents. But about a week after I moved home, my parents actually announced that they were getting a divorce. The family life that I once had was shaken now. I moved home and now it wasn't really home anymore. At the same time, I have two brothers. And my oldest brother was battling with addiction and some pretty like severe substance abuse, but also that was taking a mental toll on him as well. That was shaking up my family life as well. So basically I moved home from school to be with family because that was what was helping my anxiety. Yet once I got home, my entire family kind of changed. But I again did not want to let this stop me. I didn't want the labels to stop me. I didn't want my like diagnosis to stop me because I knew I loved Jesus and I knew I loved this life. And so I just kept going, kept praying and trusting and getting the help I needed. There was a little bit of time where I was on medication for my anxiety. I wanted to become independent from that. And so I fought really hard later on to become independent from that. I was feeling my mental health getting better and better and better every day. I wasn't letting my diagnoses be a label because I didn't want that to be the label. I wanted my label to be fun and positive and a girl that loves Jesus and not that. And so to be honest, like my mental health, I had to actively choose every single day to try to get better. It wasn't something I wanted to neglect, and I never did. I truly feel like I was able to work through that season. I can't say anything, but that's probably God. So as for school, I actually was living at home and commuting to a school that was about 45 minutes away. I went to St. Mary's College of California, and that is where I got my teaching credential and my degree from. Right as I graduated, I started applying for teaching jobs, and I was actually able to get a job at the high school that I went to. I was so excited about it, and this was going to be my route. My principal at the time, however, basically told me I couldn't really be a young life leader and a teacher at the same time. He didn't see how those lines could work together, and he just felt like lines would be crossed. And so I had to make the really hard decision to step back out of young life, and that was really hard for me. And to be honest, that ended up pulling me slowly away from my faith. And slowly, honestly, without me realizing, I was getting more and more into partying and drinking and a path that I wasn't necessarily proud of, and not really pursuing my faith as much. It hit me one night. I remember I was at the bar with my friends, and an old friend from Young Life came in, and I was like, oh my gosh, hey, and I was like saying hi, and the friends that I had around me at the time were like, how do you know her? And I was like, oh, we did youth group together. And they were like, you're a Christian? And I was like, yeah, I love Jesus. And they were like, you do? Like, I would have never been able to tell. And I don't think they meant any harm by it, but that sentence woke me up. And I was like, yeah, there's nothing about my life right now that someone on the outside would be able to tell that I love Jesus. And that like put a switch in me. I started going back to church. I started getting involved in a women's group. Just felt like I needed to get back to my faith and something that was so important to me. And I did that. And later, my principal ended up leaving the school that I was at, and we got a new principal who was much more supportive, and I felt like I could be a leader again. After kind of like getting myself back on track for 6-ish months, then I went back to my area director, and I was like, hey, I want to start leading again. And she basically was like, yeah, like come back in. And that was about 5 years ago now, and I've never looked back. I can tell you that life hasn't been easy, but it's been easier because of Jesus. Hard things have still happened to me. There still has been trials in my life. I have gone through breakups. I have gone through job loss. I have gone through family situations. I have gone through hard situations, and I have chosen that in those situations to lean on God. Always say like, bad things are going to happen no matter what. Whether you're a Christian or not, life is hard and bad things are going to happen. But as a Christian, you have two ways. You can decide to go through it on your own, being mad at God, questioning God, being angry, doing your own thing, finding your own ways to cope, or you can go through it with God, knowing that you might not understand it, but that there is a plan in this, that there is joy in this, that someone way smarter, way more powerful, way higher than you has a greater purpose for this. Is so comforting. Now as a 28-year-old, when life throws me hard situations or things come in my way, I don't know. But I do know that there's a good God above me that's holding my hand through it, and that gives me peace. And so, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. That is my story. That's my testimony. Jesus is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He is the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about when I go to bed. Jesus is the reason for my positivity, for my love for life. I will never be ashamed to proclaim my faith. So that's my story. Yeah, thanks for listening.